Good evening and welcome to Views with Joyce Waddell. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We've chosen our topic, Civil Rights History. And we've chosen that topic from some research that we have been gathering concerning African Americans' place in history, looking at some very successful stories, some areas where we can improve. As we approach February, African American History Month, we start looking at some things, success stories, and focusing on African Americans who have been successful through the years. But at the same time, want to focus on things that we could do better in. It's often been said that we have more African American young men in prison than in institutions of higher learning. And a message from the old school states that African American boys are facing an uphill battle when it comes to success because traditional institutions and old age strategies are being stretched as the Black community stretches and searches for solutions to stop this downward trend of hopelessness and despair. And we have as our guest Michael Vwjw. And he's going to share with us some things that he's experienced, some things that he's researched from firsthand in the prison system, where we have a disproportionate number of African American men. But as we speak now, African American women tends to be one of the fastest growing minorities in the prison system. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Michael, why is it that African American women now are becoming more involved, are more at larger numbers incarcerated?
That's interesting that you said that, because I remember looking at some statistics, particularly in the 90s, and said that women in general were the fastest increasing group in the prison system. That went from all classes of women, but I guess it's disproportionate with African Americans. But that was one of the statistics that came up a lot in the 90s, and unfortunately it persists today. And one of the reasons why I'm thinking so is maybe it's due with the reason of equality. As you went from a society where the man was outside the home earning a living and the woman was inside the home raising the kids, more women have to be outside the home now doing different things. And as you see a lot of times when you're outside the home, rarely does someone go to jail from inside the house. It's usually something they did on the outside.
Because nobody's going in their house and force them to become involved in the ills of society. They're in a protective environment when they're inside the home, aren't they? And so this says that everyone from noted psychiatrist Alvin Poisson to Marion Elderman, president of the Children's Defense Fund, has an opinion about what's going on with that. And many of us would suggest that the lack of stable family structures have greatly influenced where we are today, that there's a breakdown in the African American family structure. Everyone I knew as a child had a strong home environment. For example, while our fathers weren't present, they did provide us with such necessities as food. And just as important, grandfathers and uncles. Our entire neighborhood took an interest, but as we changed and as society changed, and we think about where African Americans are now, there are more opportunities to get in trouble, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because one of the things I've learned within the criminal justice system is you get the justice you can pay for, you can afford. For example, when DeLorean, who was a past president of Ford Motor Company, decided to make his own car, and it was a stainless steel car called the DeLorean.
I remember the DeLorean. It
Right.
was a very expensive car.
No, it wasn't very expensive at first.
It was?
It was only $11,000, which was expensive for
the time
the time, but not like 40 or 50,000.
today.
But his company started doing bad, which was in Ireland, and then he was videotaped to making an agreement to sell cocaine, and they had him dead wrong on there. He said, "Yeah, I'm taking $50,000. You can do this and the other." The next thing you know, they came and busted him. But did you know he got off because he called it entrapment?
And he was able to afford a defense.
Right, which
He was
says
able
this
to
was
afford
entrapment.
a great lawyer that could get him off.
Well, I don't even know if he needed a great one. You just have one to show that that's entrapment. Now you have these shows where they leave a car running with the keys in it, and people come by and they jump in the car and they steal it. Same kind of principle, but guess what? They're going to jail
for a long period of time. Now,
Yeah.
as you were in the prison system and retired from it for many years, did you see increasingly more women, African American women, coming in there?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I did not work in women's prison.
Did you see them? Did you know about it? Did
Yes, I
anybody
know
talk
about
it?
it. You know, the thing is, it's funny, like if anyone who's in the incarceration business knows that there's different kind of jails that most people work at. And you have jails where there's males that's incarcerated over the age of 21. You have juvenile jails where males are incarcerated from ages 16 to 21. And then you have female prisons. Those are the three biggest categories. And most officers I know anyway did not whether work with males, even if it was long-term killers, whatever, then work with juveniles and work with women. And I did know of several officers who worked in Rikers Island with female officers. And it's a very interesting thing he said. I thought that the reason why more women were coming to jail or women couldn't adjust to jail was because they were just new to being in that kind of environment. Whereas guys, I mean, we've done teamwork all along. If you look at the military, they wear green, so inmates wear green. So there's a lot of similarities between being in prison and growing up as a male as far as the camaraderie thing, where a lot of women don't belong in gangs or clubs or whatever. But he said, no, the difference is, and this is maybe leads to your point of why more women in there, women have been abused more. That's why you see more women incarcerated. Now he's working at Rikers Island, the largest county jail in the world, and he works in the women's side.
They have been abused more, and that's the reason why
Yes.
they're in prison now. But why, if they were abused in the past, then why weren't they in prison a long time ago?
Well, he says because a lot of times when you grow up with a certain amount of abuse, then you just don't care about certain things. If you looked at, I remember when you was growing up and say women who were strippers and whatnot, a lot of times you hear it was drug use or whatever. When I was younger growing up, and said, well, that's why some of these women do this, because there's a certain apathy that, well, if I was abused, what big deal if I sell my body or whatever? Or you get some women that, if my husband beats me down, and now if I turn around and kill him.
Oh, so they killed the husbands. Is that why they were in there?
Well, I can tell you all the way from killing husbands to baking babies in oven. But the one central story is that there was a certain amount of abuse. That's one central theme that runs through incarcerated women that you don't get necessarily with incarcerated men.
And that's why they have so many, and that was his theory as to why there was an increase in the number of females. You know,
right, because as you're abusing outside, then if you're just doing more things outside the home, all right, say if I rob somebody or you see more women getting involved in embezzling and things like that.
But one of the things that's interesting, one of the things that our author here, as we look at issues and points of view, states that spirituality was extremely important in black neighborhoods, and because there was never a question about going to church on Sunday and staying for church or going there for evening services, and Saturdays were spent. And when we went to school, we stayed for the entire day until that was over. And who heard of getting kicked out of school or fighting? And this author, James Eris, he looks at the spirituality and the breakdown of the social structure that we knew it. Audience, we're talking with Michael Vwjw as we talk about African Americans and as we talk about the civil rights history, and we point to some things that are happening in civil rights organizations and civil rights practices in our community. But we had a guy who was very good on sax a couple of months ago, and we're going to flash back to some of his music, and then we'll continue to talk about our struggle and civil rights in the African American community. Audience, I want to thank you so much for coming back with us as we continue to talk with Michael Vwjw as we talk about African American history, looking at African American young men and their disproportionate numbers in the prison society. And I found a quote by one of our authors that we had been following. It says that watching a generation of African American boys disappear before our eyes is not an option, and we all have an obligation. We cannot, as a society, afford to let that happen. And talking about the problem, while we talk about solutions, will not stop the decline. Turning our backs on it and pretending that it doesn't exist won't work either. And lastly, families without problems should help those who do. It may not be you today, but it may be you tomorrow. So what we all have to do is to roll up our sleeves collectively and do something that will help young African American boys look forward to a bright future. We must be proactive and find some solutions. We must use our places of worship to help provide home training, lessons for the young men. We must teach them how to talk to other adults and children without swearing and otherwise being incoherent. In addition, we can sponsor dresses for success seminars so that young men can become acquainted with suits, shirts, and ties, and understand that the wingtip shoe or the penny loafer can despair. So can replace, Timberland boots. So there are many things that we can do that we're not doing. Mm-hmm. And do you think if we did some of those things, we wouldn't see them all in prison?
Well, that's part of it. But also you have to do is gratify the ones who are doing things positive.
Oh, okay.
A lot of times there's a lot of things on the kids who aren't doing good and what can we do to lift them. And one of the best ways is if you exemplify, particularly through the media and the school and the church, of look at the ones who are doing good.
Now what about these saggy pants? Does that give a message to the public about that particular person? Does it say that the person's ready to go to jail?
If you don't control your media, then the ones who do can almost push it in any way to manipulate it.
Now, like walking down the street, does media control them walking down? Who has control of them?
Well, I mean, notice what you say about it. For example, if you look at that look as sort of the hip-hop grunge look, and because people like Tommy Hilfiger and other designers were able to make a lot of money, that's what made it more popular.
Is that who started?
No, that's not what started. Let me tell you what started it was back in, particularly in the 70s, and I've had other prisoners say that, no, it started in Rahway Prison. I know where I was in Sing Sing in 1981, you had the younger inmates coming with that look because the elastic was gone in their pants and you didn't give them belts. So it was actually a look started in prison of wearing baggy pants. And as I tell some of my kids that are boys, that one who came to me and that's the way he dressed, he was a foster child. And I said, we don't do this in here. That look got its start in the prison system. Why would you exemplify someone from the prison? And it wasn't from the hardened prison inmates, the gangster time you hear about or the movies might some way glorify. No, these were the weaker inmates who wore their pants like that, and started from out of laziness and then just adapted to a style. So if you say looking that way is bad, then we should step to it. But then in the same way, the grunge look, the over the clothes look, people say that's good. When you look at certain styles that women wear that is very revealing, to me it also still sends that negative message. But if it's glorified in the fashion and modeling industry, then what are you telling them?
Okay. Instead of looking up to and celebrating black men of prominence, black boys now turn to sports and music stars. Ask a young African-American male today to identify Tupac Shakur, who was killed in 1996, and Colin Powell, former Secretary of State. Most will recognize Tupac, while few will know who Colin Powell is. And so there is something drastically wrong with this picture, because our young men have declined from having pride in their appearance to wearing clothes that are 2, sometimes 3 sizes too big for them. That's one of the theories about why they wear their pants like that. Are there other theories as to why they wear the pants?
Well, it's, you know, as I was saying that even though you have some boys who do it, believe it or not, it's a minority of boys who wear their pants like that. It's not most African American males. It's a smaller percentage. Maybe that percentage is 20%, maybe it's 30%, but it's basically on those levels and should not be stereotyped for all of us or all young men of color.
Why? And they are doing it. Is it? It's just a fashion.
It's just a fashion thing, or it makes you look sort of hard. I think one of the detrimental things in life when we grow up, is, especially for me as a young male, is that when I was going to school, I wanted to sort of be respectful and nice. But girls really didn't like the guy that was nice. You get to think, oh, you're like a brother to me. But yet you get the guys that was hard, you got in trouble or whatever, and girls sort of like that. The bad boys. So one of the ways, especially when I got to college, I said, well, it's a little bit better if you want to get a girl or something, is to be a bad boy than be Mr. Nice. So once again, it goes by your image, what others see you and what they want to see you and what's mold is. And as you can see, as the example you gave, it might be a little bit easier for a guy to become a Tupac than to be a Colin Powell.
Well, in that social structure, the girls tend to like.
Yes, they'll tell you that.
And they gravitate to those because they see them as being strong and powerful.
Strong, can take care of them, self-assured, and popular. And the nice guys, like you said, the penny loafers, the Argyle socks, and whatever, that's not the greatest look.
Artists, we're continuing to talk with Michael Vwjw, who's worked in the prison system for many, many years. And as we look at why we have a disproportionate number of African Americans in the prison system, and some things that we as a society can do about it, some things that we as a society and as a neighborhood can do to help structure the lives of many of our young men so that as time passes, they can have productive lives. They can have lives where they contribute and lives where they help others. And so all about each one, teach one, each one, reach one, each one, help one. And so do people come to the prison systems to help the inmates so that when they get out, they can be productive and they can be self-sufficient?
Well, you have education in the prison system where they come and teaching GED courses. And also there's instructors that come in there to teach them carpentry and plumbing and stuff like that. But it comes down to the individual. Earlier today I was talking with some people and they're saying about how in the prison system it's easier for a lot of these guys to study, to buckle down, and at least achieve the things academically they didn't do while in high school. And as I explained to them, one of the reasons why is because in prison you do not have all the distractions you do in school. Like they said before, with the television sets, the video games, the male and female interactions, you have that on the outside. So, all right, I can study, but also I can do this, I can do that and the other. In prison, it's not like that. Your life is more regimented. So in turn, I've seen more inmates care about their education, less of them dropping out of classes like GED classes, or even at the time in my jail, they had college courses. A lot of them wanted to achieve, and they were really proud to wear the shirt and tie. And then the superintendent of the jail was there for the graduation ceremony and shook their hands when they got diplomas. These are things they hadn't seen before.
So it was but what happened when they went on the outside? That was a complete different kind of life, wasn't it?
Well, no. I believe that most guys who get incarcerated want to not go back into prison. Not everybody, but most of them. One of the things is that I found out through my over 25 years in this is that you have basically two guys coming through there. There's a guy that, all right, I've been in jail, I'm separated from my family, I don't have any privacy, and I live in constant fear. I don't never want to do this again. But then you have the other one that says, all right, boom, I went through jail, it's not so bad. I'll take the chances. I learned from other guys. All I did was put a cut on drugs and sell drugs. Now this guy's telling me how I could break into cars and this and that, so I'm learning more. So he's learning more skills to probably put him back in jail.
But there are skills that they learn while they're in there to help them when they're outside, and there are others who learn skills.
But it's usually at the end of their bid that you have more of these life skills to teach them. That this is how you stay out of, this is the jobs to take. This is to take jobs. This is civic responsibility. This is anger management. This is AA. Well, actually, beginning they do a lot of AA and NA, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcohol Anonymous jobs. But one of the problems is, let's say, example, all right, now I've done my time and I'm out of jail. Are you going to hire them? Are you going to let them work in your house? Can your daughter talk to them? Can they vote? Can they get this and that job now?
Well, oftentimes people won't know that unless they tell them.
But you have to. And you have a job application, it's always on there. Have you done a felony? Name me any decent job that doesn't have that on there.
Unless do they have programs where they place them on a job?
Yes, they have a few programs with that.
That's people that will accept them.
One of the most successful things I've seen when inmates learn culinary arts in prison and come out, I've known of several inmates who've gotten very successful in that. In fact, one of the guys, I think he has something on the Food Network, that he came out and taught kids how to cook and whatnot, which he learned in prison.
Artists, well, thank you for being with us on Views with Joyce Waddell. I want you to tune in again next week for another interesting program. I want to thank Michael Vwjw again for being with us and sharing his experience. Tune in again next week for another interesting program.